Welcome to Casba Obscura, a look at life in the dark and upside down. I'm your host, Bash. There's an episode of Everybody Loves Raymond where Raymond and his wife Deborah come home from a weekend getaway and are too tired to put their shared suitcase away, so they leave it on the stairs. The next day it's still there, and before they know it, 2 weeks have passed by. Even though the couple has gone back to regular life at home, the luggage becomes this silent block in their pathway up the stairs and ultimately their marriage. Both Ray and Deborah silently and passively get more and more furious with each other. One day, Ray's mother, visits and tells Deborah a story about the big wooden fork and spoon hanging in their kitchen. How it was a wedding gift they both hated. How no one wanted to return it. How it caused a big fight between them. To spite each other, they each ended up nailing a utensil to the wall in their kitchen, to which Marie says they are still hanging there 45 years later. And every time she walks in the kitchen, she's reminded of that fight thanks to those two objects on the wall. Although Deborah and Raymond end up making up in their own way, arguing who will be the bigger person and bring it up the stairs finally, Marie ends up telling her husband it's finally time to take down the big fork and spoon. The unfortunate part is when she finally goes to remove them, there's still an outline of them on the wall because the wallpaper has faded around them. It just looks so bad that she ends up putting them back in place. If you want to feel a different energy in a room, move some objects around. 27 things to be exact. The idea of this comes from Feng Shui and it's said to help energy flow better. Things can often collect dust, and when we let things remain stagnant, we cause all kinds of energy blocks. For the Romanos, the luggage not only affected their space, but their attitudes towards each other, their home, and their happiness. I've felt this before in my own home. The stillness until I open a window, the overwhelm until I put things away, the happiness from lighting a candle, or decorating my fridge with colorful magnets. Today, it felt right to talk about the environment as I start to work on preparing my house for the winter season. There are so many ways to begin this conversation and so many ways that it could branch off to other topics. The three big takeaways from today come from the art of Feng Shui, the KonMari method, and the Sattvic practice of purity. I was thinking about how much my home affects my mood and how I'm constantly trying to keep it clean and tidy. I remember my messy room growing up with stacks of CDs and magazines, the overflowing closets and drawers full of whatever phase I was into at the time, and how the present me would not be able to live with such clutter. Environment refers to the places and spaces we occupy. The phrase cluttered space, cluttered mind refers to when the space around us is a mess and the impact it has on our mind. I have always described myself as organized chaos when it came to how I'd store stuff in my room and in my mind. I have a good memory bank for where all my important things are, under the piles and in all the drawers, but I'll admit that it's not really a good system. When things seem out of our control, sometimes they are. Although we can't have control over another person, since we know that we do have profound influence, we can at least try to create an environment around us that offers us some peace and joy to live with. Those are the ideas behind Acharya Shunya's 5 purity contemplations. Shunya begins with looking at the environment, referring to the places and spaces we occupy, as a way to start intentionally and actively improving our lives. She mentions this also includes spaces we do not own, for example, someone else's home, a park, or a public space too. What you do in private is always reflected outwards in some way, and to truly be a person of integrity, it requires you to act according to your principles in both private and public. Keeping your house spotless and clean but littering in a park makes no sense, and it's disrespectful and hypocritical. So the point is to have the nature of purity in all aspects of life. Acharya Shunya also says that purity of the environment trickles all the way down to our clothes and our shoes. Changing into different clothes for different activities or spaces, or taking off your shoes when entering someone's home, are all ways that you can embody this practice. Wayne Dyer actually mentions this too, and he even took off his shoes on one of the stages that he built as a sacred space. It's like the idea of having an altar, a place in your environment that's sacred, except looking at your whole life in that way. Every little corner gets dusted and counted for. Now, it's not always possible to have complete control over every environment we enter. Sometimes we live and work with others and have a communal space we frequent. but we can take a look at whatever space is possible to have an impact on. For example, if you're eating in a coffee shop, you can leave the space clean for the next person by throwing your garbage away. I also think of the kitchen, whereas other places in my home still need some work. The kitchen is a place where I have a pretty good system, and it's one of the places that gets used and cleaned daily, making it a place where energy is constantly flowing. It's the place I really try to avoid clutter and mess. One of my daily habits is to do the dishes at the end of the night and set the kitchen up for the next day. It's a small action that has a very big impact. It's way easier to start the day off right when there's not a whole mess to clean, and you can pull a clean cup from the cupboard instead of from the dirty sink. Another small thing is being mindful of the stuff I bring into the kitchen. Apart from keeping it clean as a type of sacred space and for sanitary reasons, the food brought in, the types of utensils and kitchen tools, even my cleaning supplies, all of these are different little areas to consider when adding to the space. I try not to have too many kitchen gadgets and stick to simple, versatile tools that can serve multiple purposes. Something that may not be for everyone is creating an altar or multiple altars around your home. It doesn't have to be religious if you don't want it to, just a beautiful visual reminder of the vibe you're going for. It's the same thing as lighting a candle, it helps set the mood for the room. The stuff you keep has energy. You may have heard that some people believe you should not wear jewelry belonging to someone else because it carries with it a certain karma or energies. Same thing with clothes. There was actually an episode of Kim's Convenience where Janet's mom is wearing the sweater of someone who passed away, and Janet knows if she tells her, her mom would freak out because she's superstitious. The belief that wearing a dead person's clothes can be bad luck, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that one, because I would want to have a loved one's stuff to wear or remember them by. But I am also a person who's freaked out by the idea of a possessed doll or a cursed ring, for example. The stuff we surround ourselves can reflect back to us who we are, and we can curate or at least be aware of what we have and be very grateful for the good and wonderful things in our life. Marie Kondo, the author of the book The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, inspired a new way of letting go of items that I had always had a hard time doing. Her method involved seeking out items which brought joy and spark to your life. It's about sorting and letting go of things with gratitude, while intentionally seeking what items to have and keep. It wasn't that I had never sorted my closet before, but her philosophy and way of approaching the daunting task of tidying up helped me process the actions and deepen my appreciation for what I had. There was a time when I felt connected to minimalism, the concept of living with less. I had always been a collector of things. I feel like I'm the little mermaid in her underwater cave full of stuff. I'm also the sentimental one who's kept bits of paper and small tchotchkes from places I've been or from people who I've loved or who loved me. While minimalism strives for the complete opposite of this, it's about being content with less and physically having less items to count or take inventory of. I might have jumped on this trend too eagerly in the past by donating some clothes I regretted doing years later. I definitely approached it with the wrong mentality. Until I heard Marie Kondo talk about living with joy, not necessarily less, I began to think about my possessions differently. I had only purged in the name of minimalism, but I didn't feel really good about what I let go. I had too many things, and I had never really considered how much of it was actually my favorite, and how much of it was held on for the sake of guilt or proof of something. I had even kept receipts and broken items at some point just to save in case. The KonMari method taught me I could live with more, or at least a good amount of stuff by surrounding myself with only items that I truly loved, and that could make my life richer in some way. It was not so much materialistic, but more practical and spiritual at the same time. There's a mindfulness meditation about entering spaces. The practice is to be aware of how we enter and exit spaces. This means taking a breath before opening and walking through a door. If it's something that you often go about doing without realizing, and you either slam the door carelessly or forget why you walked in a room, you can try putting a little sticky note on the door that you use the most often. The other day, I was also watching a video on twins who were separated at birth, and the study of how their lives differed because of the different environments that they grew up in. The video stated that we all have genes we were born with, but they can change with expression, and it takes a certain environment to bring those out. By changing the environment, it can have a big impact on gene expression and behavioral expression. It's essentially impossible for all of us to be the same, because there are so many factors in our environments that we may not even know can affect us. I do think it's interesting because there can be two identical people, and yet if they have a slight temperature difference or another factor, it can affect their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual being. In Ayurveda, the prakruti and vikruti of the parents can have an imprint on the child before they're even born. This basically means that the diet and lifestyle and even the stress levels of the parents, whether balanced or unbalanced, can be factors that affect us beyond the womb before we have even a chance to choose our prospective environment for birth. The environment of the womb is essentially like a first home. When I think about the environment I grew up in and the fact I attended the same school and was in the same class as some of my friends, and yet we all have different memories and recollections of how it was back then, it really shows me that we're highly complex and layered individuals. The uniqueness of each person stems from this specific way that we as individuals react to the world around us, and vice versa. So, in the end, our environment shapes who we are, and we can also impact our environment. But both have controllable and uncontrollable factors. So, focus on what you can control to the best of your ability. If you can make a room more pleasant to be in, or you can leave a space as beautiful as you found it for the next person, you can impact those around you on a deeper level than you might have thought. The idea behind some of these simple yet powerful concepts about environment by Marie Kondo and Acharya Shunya, these centuries of feng shui that continue to have a place and benefit in the real world, despite dealing with energies that are invisible, reveals the secret of setting yourself up for success. It's very similar to when ancient master Zhao Zhou said wash your bowl, or when Jordan Peterson said make your bed, and even when ancient practices suggest cleansing rituals to heal a person, all one and the same. Having a place for everything, being able to count and know your possessions, keeping your space around you clear of dirt and obstruction, and surrounding yourself with items that you personally find beautiful and inspiring. These are simple practices, really. It's general hygiene and, according to the KonMari method, good organization and storage strategies. But it's really more than just having a clean home. Your environment includes the stuff that you bring into your view, your bubble, your energy field. If you've ever watched a scary movie or a creepy thriller, you can feel slightly weird or off for the rest of the night or even the next day. It's the same thing with the energy of your environment. So if you like that stuff and it makes you happy, so be it. There was a time in high school where I was extremely into dark themes due to the music and the media at the time, and I hung a Marilyn Manson poster in my bedroom. And I remember my mother was not too happy when she would walk by the obscene poster every time she'd pass my room. I've definitely lightened up since then, although I'd say it's important to still have things like an altar or a small shrine that honors both life and death. My grandmother has a small corner shelf where she keeps the photo prayer cards from funerals. I used to think it was a bit much, especially because it emphasizes that all those people have passed away. But I started setting up my own altars, unknowingly honoring the dead by placing 2 funeral cards for my 2 dear friends, and I started to see why she did it. However, the altar is not a sad place. In fact, it's full of life and color. There's flowers and incense and mantras and special little items that I've collected. When I step up to the altar, my presence and energy shift. I almost want to bow my head, and sometimes I do, as if to say, I respect you, I love you, I thank you. I've always been a fan of the Vanita-style paintings that depict flies on fruit and dead flowers and a skull. They're beautiful and haunting, but not morbid. I don't find them dark. As a still life, there is already something about the frozen moment that screams immortal. Yet it reflects back the clear message that nothing lasts forever, and I think it's a wonderful juxtaposition to consider. A few years ago, I asked my students to paint their environments at home, since we were all doing school remotely. Many of them chose to paint their rooms as it was a place they spent the most time in. The paintings were covered with symbolism and revealed what was truly important or what truly sparked joy in their lives, enough to make it on the canvas. Game systems, clothes, makeup, shoes, stuffed animals. The variety of spaces that came alive through the shading and the blending was really cool, but I loved the way each student curated the composition to reflect who they were inside and out. I've been doing some cleaning this fall season to refresh my world a bit, from the closet being reorganized for the colder months to my cleaning routine that I've upgraded. I'm hoping that I can clear out the air and exchange some energy. With new energy comes fresh new ideas. Start with just the space around you, and watch how it permeates to other areas of your life, even the invisible. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Leave your comments and questions for me. Have yourself a wonderful day. Peace out.